Hey, Chris and Paul. The thing I like most about the Emmy Awards is that we get a year like this where we have a lot of newcomers. And let's take a look at some of these, and I'll just tick them off. Let's just restrict ourselves for now to the comedy categories, where for comedy actor, let's start there. We have Don Cheadle, who could get in there for House of Lies, Will Arnett for Up All Night, Elijah Wood for, what's the show called, Chris?
Wilfred.
That's right, over on FX Network. Uh, Warwick Davis from Life's Too Short on HBO. Tim Allen's back with Last Man Standing. And, of course, there's Ashton Kutcher for Two and a Half Men. Paul, let's start off with you. Out of all of these fellows, who do you think has the best chance of actually getting nominated?
Oh, I think you'd have to go with Don Cheadle, an Oscar nominee, comes to TV, not just TV, but Showtime, limited run of a series, not the 22 or 24 week that you have of Ashton Kutcher and the like, but in that sort of showcase role on a premium TV station, I think that's the person you're looking to get the nomination.
And Chris, what do you have to say?
I think so too. The nice thing about that category is there's definitely two openings. Steve Carell is no longer on The Office, and Matt LeBlanc was nominated last year, but episodes didn't have any new ones this year. So a couple of folks are going to get slots that weren't nominated last year. And Don Cheadle, to me, I mean, he plays a very the character's got a lot of idiosyncrasies, and he's kind of a corporate bad guy, good guy. It's a lot to play with there, and I think it would be very, very rare for this category to have an African American too, which I think is really nice.
Yes, in the comedy categories, that is. Well, actually, in most of these races, I guess it is rare. There is Lily White. They tend to be as the Oscars. Ashton Kutcher. Go ahead, Paul.
I just wanted to remind everyone that Bill Cosby did not put himself forward for The Cosby Show. I think that's somebody who had won, 3 drama Emmys in the 60s, and I think would have probably won at least that many in the 80s for The Cosby Show.
That's true.
I think the last one might have been
Benson.
A handful of, well, that was close. It's not often, just because they don't get the chance to star in but I think maybe Bernie Mac.
Right,
6 or 7 years ago.
Of course. Yeah.
But I think he was only nominated. Was he only nominated once? It's funny, Paul, too. We all like Emmy history. Remember when Robert Guillaume won for Benson?
Right.
And it was the first year of The Cosby Show, and he thanked Bill for not submitting himself.
Now, speaking of Emmy history, we have Tim Allen is back, and of course that leads to the inevitable joke of if he will he forget to submit his name for nomination this year. It's no Home Improvement, but Last Man Standing is in the running, I guess, right?
Should he bother to submit his name? I think is really
Ooh, Paul.
Well, it's just who you could stop 100 people on the street. How many of them even know that Tim Allen's back? I mean, that's a show that's just doing so in the ratings. Critics were fairly dismissive of it. I don't think that he should waste his $300 entry fee.
Well, while we're being vicious here, Chris, let me put you on the spot and ask you about Ashton Kutcher, because we know that sometimes when people replace stars, they get nominated, but not very often, and probably not this time, right?
I really don't think so. He's hurt a lot by the fact that John Cryer is going to move out of supporting and try for lead. So not only does he have all these other people to contend with, but he's got somebody from his own show. I thought his best shot at trying to get into the awards world, I thought the Golden Globe voters might actually go for him. That was the show with him on it had only been going a handful of weeks at that point, because they would have been voting in like late November. And still, a lot of buzz about him being on there. The ratings were extraordinary for him to come aboard. But if the Golden Globe voters didn't go for him to try to have him on their red carpet, I just can't imagine the Emmy voters would.
Any last thoughts here on this category, Paul? Like Warwick Davis, he plays the, shall we say, the vertically challenged star of Life's Too Short with Ricky Gervais. Elijah Wood. FX has been getting some serious Emmy attention recently, but he doesn't. He didn't get any respect for his Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think you're talking about all these people that could fill that 6th slot. I mean, does Jim Parsons, who everyone sort of almost is predicting will win again, I mean, does his co-star Johnny Galecki get in? He was a surprise last year when he got nominated. This year, maybe he doesn't get in. I mean, I think, you know, there is that jockeying for the 6th slot, and I think that, you know, with the names you mentioned, all have a shot at it. I don't think any of them would be a huge surprise if we heard their name mentioned in the nominees.
Now, taking a look over at the... Go ahead, Chris.
And a name that's not new, but could not contend last year's Larry David. He's back and eligible again.
Yeah,
and he's been nominated several times and still seems to have that real street cred, industry cred, because he, you know, does basically everything on the show. And this was one of their best seasons, Curb. They went to New York, which is his original home base, and so to me, it's probably 7 people. Your 4 that were nominated last year, plus Don Cheadle, John Cryer, and Larry David. 7 people fighting it out for 6 slots.
Over on the ladies' side, we've got, of course, Julia Louis-Dreyfus will be nominated for Veep on HBO. There's some question whether or not Laura Dern gets in, even though she won the Globe, right? I mean, it's not a show with the highest ratings. Paul, what do you think? It's the kind of role that if she got nominated, she could win because it's a very flamboyant role emotionally. But getting nominated is her big challenge, isn't it?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I've been thinking about that a lot and wondering, boy, does the fact that her last name starts with a D help her? As they're sort of is the list not alphabetized? I mean, as they're going through the list,
it is.
You know, Tina Fey with an F, Laura Dern with a D. Are these people filling up slots, and suddenly you've done your 6 long before you get to somebody, you know, down at the other end of the alphabet? You know, Melissa McCarthy, for instance. Have you run out of slots by the time you get to the M's?
Chris thinks Melissa may not be nominated this year, right, Chris?
This is one of the craziest races I've ever seen, Tom. It's a credit to women on TV, especially women in comedy, that it's this way this year. But there's essentially 12 women fighting it out for 6 slots. 12 legitimate cases can be made. I think you're going to see some people that have generally been just kind of name-checked, like an Edie Falco, not get in. Just because there's so many, and there's so many new ones. Melissa McCarthy, I don't think is going to get back in. Nobody watches that show. She won last year because of Bridesmaids.
Whoa, what do you mean? Wait. Nobody watches that show, Chris?
Nobody
watches that show, but they watch Enlightened on HBO. They watch...
Nobody in the industry watches Mike and Molly.
Nobody will admit to watching it. I think there's a difference. I'm not going to accept. I'm not going to accept that nobody watches.
Chris and I had a conversation yesterday, and I was poo-pooing this theory that he has of Melissa McCarthy not getting nominated until he reminded me that she didn't get nominated at SAG, which of course has a very similar voting system with peers voting for peers. And I thought, okay, I think being overweight like that gives you an edge, and it helps you actually to get nominated, because there's a sympathy factor there among the older folks in the Academy. But that's a whole other theory I have that we won't go into. Zooey Deschanel, she's looking pretty good here, isn't she?
She's not half the woman of Melissa. Does she have the heft to get in the race? Is that what you're asking, Tom?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Does she have the heft? Does she?
So what's the answer? Zooey Deschanel. Maybe yes, possibly.
When the show debuted, I thought she was a lock. In fact, those first 2 episodes, I thought, wow, no matter what happens the rest of the year, if she gets nominated, she could submit either one of these and possibly win. But, it's going to be really tough to get in this kind of... There may be somebody, shockingly, like Tina Fey, who doesn't even get nominated. Just because the show is in its 6th year, and will voters just be looking for some fresh blood to put in here?
Is it possible, Paul? Let's take some of these other names we've got here. Christina Applegate, and we have the new. Speaking of HBO, we've got the Laura Dunham show, Girls, debuting on.
Yes, Lena Dunham.
Excuse me, Lena Dunham. Yes.
Yeah.
Put my glasses back on and say it again. Good.
That's okay.
But she's that show's got an enormous buzz, doesn't it?
Absolutely, I think that Chris can speak to that. And don't forget, this Lena Dunham is the creator, the writer, the star.
She's the new Tina Fey, right?
Indie filmmaker comes to HBO, so the prestige of that the paycaster as well. Yeah, they're spoiled. It's nice for them. They've been sort of and on the female side, shut out a little bit. Now they might this embarrassment of riches with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and perhaps Lena Dunham. Very strong roles for women on that show called Girls. Women in their 20s, sort of Sex in the City for a new generation. Yeah, I think that's exciting for them, and it's just a question of maybe category placement. Is it how much of an ensemble is that show? Do you think, Chris? Girls, is it?
I think it would be like Sex in the City, and that everybody would be supporting except for her. Just from what I've read, obviously it's debuting this weekend, so that really helps her writing, directing, starring. The reviews have been outstanding. 4-star reviews basically everywhere I've turned. The thing about it too that'll catch on with Emmy voters is so many of the reviews talk about this being the first voice out of this particular generation of girls, ladies in their 20s to talk for that generation. And boy, when they start throwing those kind of sentences out there in whatever HBO does in their campaign materials, that'll latch on with some voters.
And brand new, watching it now, watching new episodes now, watching new episodes of Veep now, not reruns, not the last few episodes, not tuning into New Girl for the first time, but watching I think that's the timing is perfect.
And the episodes will be sent to the members of the TV Academy. Yeah, HBO is very shrewd about this, and of course they've lost Entourage. Curb is back, but they used to be big players here with Sex and the City and other things, and now it looks like they're coming back strong.